Good evening, good day, or good morning, depending on when you're watching this. So this video here is, I guess we'll just call it, or I'll just call it the weather watching series. Anyone who's either watched some of my videos or seen some of the tweets on the accounts that I tweet out at are most likely familiar with geoengineering, climate change, weather warfare. I'm just naming terms that are popular, trending hashtags and stuff related to these things. I'm not going to go into geoengineering itself or climate change or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to actually point out a phenomenon that I think is pretty interesting and reveals another layer of either deliberate misconceptions or deliberate obfuscation of the reason why it occurs. But I don't want to phrase it. So what I'm going to do is just go through the first video, which is 3 minutes. I'm going to let this play. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let you guys as the audience watch it. And then I'll go ahead and do some commentary after the fact. And I'll scrub through the video basically like this and just talk over the specific point I want to address. And then go through some of the other commentary, some noticeable things. So here I'm just coming up to finding a position to start filming without getting hit by a car. And we're looking up. It's not too shaky. I hope there's not anybody getting motion sickness. I'm pretty steady here. Then I move around the corner just a little bit. Got about another minute here. So you get the gist of this video. So then there's a second video where I just go about a quarter of a mile down the street, which will be video number 2. Actually, I'm at least a mile away from that previous location, still following that same southwestern line on the block. So that's, maybe a 10-minute walk if the average walking pace is 1 to 5 miles per hour. So let's just say this is 10 minutes down the block, about a mile away from me, or a mile away from video 1, same direction. Alright, so while this is running, I'll go into the commentary. So over here, right by the light post, hopefully there's clicking here, right here. This is actually those previous trails. So they didn't disappear, they didn't dissipate. They're literally spreading out. And then let's go back to video 1. I'll stop this here. I'll leave it right there. Now, one of the things I think strike me is the sheer speed of how fast this thing is going. That in a 3-minute video, it traverses the distance from when I start to behind this, to through the sun in terms of the angle of the camera. The other most interesting thing, and I don't know if you've noticed it, is this dark line on each trail. In some cases, that is a wake. That's a type of wake. That is that the material is so thick and dense up there that sometimes when the planes fly through again, this one being 3 total. There's one over here at the bottom by this light post where the controls are. I'll just move the controls where I want to talk, where I'm pointing at. So that line's already been flown. Then we've got the second one here. And then the one I recorded at this, I mean, these are just accelerated speeds. These are not commercial airplanes at all. And I myself have personally witnessed the planes refueling in the air, syncing up to a larger plane via the nose and refueling. But this is what I want to talk about right here. This is this black line. That is a shadow. That is not a wake. That's an actual shadow. Now the only way that shadow could occur, you'll see right over here by the tree branch, there's this leftover shadow. There's 2 ways. There's one way that I've devised myself, and if I were to prove it out myself, I could debunk it, but I'm going to see if anybody can come up with it before I give them the answer. But there's no possible way for the shadow, and let's start with the first stream. You can already see a shadow here, say right where these pipes are. There's already a shadow occurring on the upper behind, and this being our only light source. The implication is that this is actually above the sun, because this shadow, this plane is flying higher than the sun, because that shadow could not appear. This one, down to the second stream, the second trail, has drifted. Scrub through this on your own, and so you don't have to keep watching it. But you can see how fast even the wind is up there, or the atmosphere, and when I zoom in, and you can see these little puffies, how quickly they're moving. So this drift is on the other side of the sun, casting a shadow in this direction, and then we have a shadow casting in this direction. So both contrails, or chemtrails more appropriately, are both casting a shadow. This one appearing to be above, and this one appearing to be offset lower left, this one being offset upper right. But now watch how the proximity of it changes, which means it's drifting without dissipating. The entire line is drifting in unison. And then here we go. The shadow starts to move behind it. Which means it has drifted above and behind the sun. And I've only seen this a couple times, just because of the the sheer amount and how quickly they're able to cover it up. And I'm focusing in on it right now just so you can get a good look at it. But you know, I've seen and read a few things about ideas on a local sun, on what's called a local sun, and that the sun is not 96 million miles away. And again, I'm not actually talking about the geoengineering. This is an entirely different effect. Let me just pause it here. I will talk about the geoengineering here. So the reason why I'm zooming in the middle here is that what you're actually seeing is I don't think the chemicals are stopping and then making a patchwork like up at the top left here to complete that. I think it's going through something somehow, and what you're going to watch is the line starts to fill in and create itself. It's getting whiter on its own. So it's expanding, but somehow hits some sort of bump, whether it be a waveform, an energy waveform, or something like that, where it stalled out or appeared to stall out. But you can actually see that it's trying to connect to the other, you know, the other parts of the trail. So now we've seen, and again, this is only a 3-minute long video for these things to drift perfectly in a southwestern direction. And the shadows are still there a little bit. Look at the speed at both the drift, the fact that the whole thing drifts in unison while expanding. See, it's spreading out as we see in the next video. Let me stop it here and go back to the part 2. So we can see here at the very beginning that those trails are still there. And this is, like I said, at least 10-15 minutes later and a mile away. And they have certainly spread out, and they have certainly gotten thicker. So then with this one, the reason why this is interesting, this video, is because there's no possible way. I purposefully pan over to this airplane over here, which is coming out of JFK. Coming out of JFK. There are no airports. There's no way that any planes are going to fly upwardly like this. There's no path. And then notice the shadows start to emerge in the back here. So this is flying almost vertical, and the contrail and chemtrail itself is casting a shadow on, you know, mist or you know, existing mist trails. Like let's just scrub back. Look at this by the sign. Look at by the sign here. Look at these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these perfect horizontal lines. This almost looks like Photoshop work, like someone went in and tried to clone the clouds. But what this is this is the material interacting with waveforms, not wind, but some sort of energy or waveform that is identifying either a magnetic effect or radiation effect, or, you know, whatever energy form it is. It's identifying it. It's like, you know, being undulated by it. And waveforms do propagate in, I don't know if the word is linear, but they do propagate in a geometric way. And again, the fact that this is going so vertical with a shadow behind it, I think is as remarkable as the fact that they're, you know, basically spraying us with this stuff at all times and covering up the sky and blocking out the sun constantly. I mean, look at that shadow. Look how fast these things are going. Watch as it passes through the top left of the sun. So this plane is would have to be behind the sun or above it for this shadow. And look at the shadow move. Look how quickly it moves. That's how quickly the contrail and chemtrail, again, how quickly it's drifting. Even here you can see the shadow. Look at that. Some interesting spectrum coloration there on the zoom. And then, like the previous video, it's above the sun. it would have to be for that shadow to move the way it does. I hope that doesn't make anybody dizzy. I'm just trying to scrub through in a manner that allows you to grasp both visually and literally what I'm explaining here, that this sun is not higher than the plane. The plane is higher. It's not only higher, but it's above and behind it. That's what that would indicate. There's no way those shadows could, light doesn't work that way. And here we can see it spreading out. So this isn't, it's not a solar shield. And the reason why I know it's not a solar shield is because it's just not everywhere. If let's pause this over here by the sign. If this was really meant to help everybody feel less heat and less UV rays, they would literally have to block it out everywhere. But they just block out where it's moving. All this blue and all this bright blue and everything would have to be blocked out because the angle, the heat should be, if the sun is as far away as people, the scientists and NASA say, the radiant heat is radiating over here as well. So anybody that's over a mile, 2 miles, 10 miles, whatever it is, they're still going to feel heat. So this little bit of patch that they're making, that could be, I'm guessing, let's just look at it. 20 miles big, right? Compared to this one here, we get actually a nice sense of scale with the buildings being here. Another interesting thing is, look at this puffy cloud right there. This cloud is lower than the trail. So this is actually under the sun, technically, because the light source is above the cloud and it's darker down here. Whether or not it's a real cloud, I don't know, but the light pretty much reveals the way the light's working. And the speed of the dissipation of the cloud, and the fact that it doesn't dissipate, it just spreads out. This should be enough evidence for anybody to persuade them. And then also, people who do believe in the geoengineering and recognize that it's real are probably already shocked. But the fact that now I'm suggesting there's another layer to the lie, or another layer to the hidden agenda or hidden aspect of this, is that the planes also appear to be flying above and over the sun, which would then technically mean they're not actually blocking out the sun as well, because they wouldn't need to fly above it. They would always have to be below it. So not only do we have a light source confirming that the planes are above the sun, but this would also neutralize any solar shield myths or attempts to claim that this is to protect us from UV radiation. I recognize too, I have video of smokestacks, and I've seen reports of ships out at sea. There's another little plane right there, actually, in the lower corner. Ships out at sea billowing stuff into the skies too, and I recognize that there's a couple different parallel constructed lies and excuses, in that they do actually shield you from the sun, but what it does is it's not shielding you, is it creates a hot pocket. There's no way you could cover 20, 30 miles of land and expect chemicals made of aluminum, barium, and strontium to reflect heat back. Because what's going to happen is, it's more like, that's like saying aluminum foil only gets hot on one side. What's going to happen is that radiant heat is going to go back down on the earth. It's going to block out photons, like the light, but it's not going to block the heat. It actually gets hotter is what happens. So, that's a health issue too, because the sunlight is pretty much, everything in society, biology, and everything is dependent on photons and sunlight, even including our health and our skin and our eyes, how they function. So the main purpose of this video is to establish, or at least put forth a position that these planes are flying higher than the sun. So we know that we already, anybody who's going to watch this or possibly see it will, probably already accepts geoengineering as a lie or climate change or anything like that. But this just adds another layer of, if you have to try to convince somebody of something, they're going to, and you bring this up, I don't know, you might make someone's head pop as if there weren't enough flies to sort through. All right, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think. I'd be interested in all opinions and ideas. I'm very interested in any opinions or ideas related to that, because the video is fairly clear. There's been no manipulation by myself, and you watched it live here. So